Okay, so I guess you can call this a follow-up to the nHair tutorial I did with the rope that was attached to the boat. Somebody asked, can you do like a balloon or something like that so it's actually pulling that geometry? And that's actually what I have set up here. I had to do a little testing because I haven't done it in a while. I did a little cheat that I think there's a way around, but I got to figure out. But at least I can show you how I set this up and how this all works. So that's the end result, and I'm going to start from scratch. So what I'll do is I'll just create a sphere. And normally you could make this into your balloon or whatever it is you want to do. I'm going to go and put it right about there, and I'm actually just going to put its bottom right on that. I delete its history and freeze its transforms. You don't need to name it, but let's be diligent here. And I'm just going to make a curve that goes from here to here. Now the way I do this is actually a little bit of a trick, just using my own tools. So I'm just going to put 2 joints in there, and on that second joint, I'm just going to go ahead and split that joint, but I don't want that many controls in there, or CVs on that curve. So I'm going to do 4, so it gives me 4 in the middle plus the ends. I can do a little bit, well, actually let's make it 5, why not? And then I have a thing that I've written to make a curve out of it. And I'm just left with a curve like that. But if, say, you wanted to do what I'm doing in the script by hand, I'll show you how to do that too. So what I'm going to do is use the Create Joint tool. I'm going to go in here and actually I don't even need to do that. Let's just do a Create Curve tool. So on Create Curve Tools, CV Curve Tool, it's on Defaults. And I'm going to hold down X and just go click, 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 click. Okay, cool. Now I have a curve created that has a CV at each of the grid points here. Now that might not be enough points, so I'm actually going to go in here into the curves and do a rebuild curve. Right now it's 4, let's make it 8, just so it has more. And leave everything else the same, doesn't really matter. But let's take a look at our curve, and you can see it looks like that now. The thing about NURBS curves is you are going to have the aiming curves, CVs, as your secondary CVs. I'm going to leave those in there. It should be okay. And we'll call this, I can't call it string because that's actually not what we want to call it. We'll just call it SDR CRV. Okay, cool. And get rid of that. Cool. So the first thing we do is what we did before is just turn this into nHair. So with it selected, I'm going to go into nHair, and you have what's called Make Selected Curves Dynamic. Couldn't be simpler. I think by default it does attach curves to selected surfaces. For this demo, I'm going to turn that off. Exact shape match, I'll just leave that on and say Make Curves Dynamic. Now the thing you want to know about nHair, so if you're a hair system, the hair system is going to tell it how to all the dynamic attributes and things like that, everything you do. You have the nucleus system, which is actually a full-on dynamic system that anything N related uses, the nucleus, hence N, so nHair, nCloth. And then you have your follicles. So your follicles, if you think of it, that's where the hair is grown out of, just like a hair follicle on a human. And you have a curve there. So that curve that you see here is the original curve, the one, the driving curve. And then you have a group here called hairSystem output curves. This is the curve that's going to be driven, or the dynamic end result curve. So if I hit play right now, nothing's going to happen. You can see the little blue line shows up. That's that curve here. And so basically what's happening is we can look at our follicle and see what kind of connections we have. So just as before, I'm going to go in here under my connections, on my point lock, I'm going to turn it to base, so that way it's only connected to the bottom. And now if I hit play, watch what happens. Well, we see a little bit of a jiggle, but just to make things more apparent, I'm going to key here and move this over here and key there. So you can see here's that driving curve, here's the dynamic curve. Nothing happened to the dynamic curve yet because I haven't hit press play. Hit play, and you see how it follows along and actually falls. Now, you do want to make sure that in your playback speed, you're set to real time or play every frame max real time, which is what I like. That way, the reason I use play every frame is because it makes sure that it calculates every frame. Where if with dynamics, that's important. If you do real time, it may skip frames, and that'll actually mess up your dynamics, and so you're not looking at the actual result of what you want to get. All right, so I actually don't even need to see this original curve. I thought by default it would hide it. I haven't done anything with the curve dynamic settings yet. It's just the default settings that are on there. But let's go ahead and make this balloon into an nCloth balloon. So I'm going to go here to nCloth and do create nCloth. And again, I'll just reset settings. It's going to automatically attach it to the nucleus one that already is in our scene. But this time what I do is under that nCloth shape. So by default it's selected, but if you need to select it, it's this one here that looks like a little orange t-shirt. I can go to nCloth 1, and under presets, wrong, I need to go to the nCloth shape, sorry. Under presets you have a whole bunch of things you can choose from. I'm just going to choose, I was going to choose beach ball. Yeah, so beach ball. So now if I go back here and hit play, this is what we get. We get this thing, it kind of pops into a larger shape first, and then falls. If I go down to my pressure settings, you see my start pressure is set to 2, which is why it's going to go quickly to a big shape. If I set that to 1 and go back and hit play, it's not going to pop nearly as hard as it was before. It's still going to push a little bit. If I put it to like say 0.5, watch what happens, a little bit less. Now if I put it to 0, almost none. But you can actually like pump these things up, so that I say at a pump rate of 1, it's going to slowly expand. We don't want that. Oops. Or it'll contract, right? So much that it inverted. All right, set that to 0. Cool. So now we just have it very neutral, very natural. But what I want to do is connect these two together. So the way we do that is by using an nConstraint. So you have component and component to component. I'm going to use component to component. So I want to make sure I have both the balloon object and the output curve selected. I'm going to hit F8, and I'm going to go in here and just select the CV that's of the curve and the polygon vertex of the nCloth and say component to component. Not a whole lot of options here, just say apply. If you don't get any errors, that's a good thing. And so now watch what happens when I hit play. Oh. There we go, it's attached. If I go in here and let's do a little animation. So what I'm going to do is just create a locator real quick. And this is just something I wanted to show. So there's kind of a neat way to do really quick animations if you want just down and dirty quick things. And there's a command called record adder. I'll make this bigger so you can see it. And then you say the first flag is -AT for attributes. And I'm going to put in translate. And I'm doing this on a locator because I don't want all those weird connections on my actual... I mean, I could do it on the follicle directly, but in this case, I'm just going to do it directly on a locator so I can pick and choose after I've baked this out. So the only real difference you see is it says record 1, record 2, record 3. And if I open the node editor, you know, nothing's really happening yet. It's going out from the locator into the records. But then to make that work, what you want to do, and the way I do this is I create a little shelf button because it makes it easier. I'm going to go to shelf last here. And I've actually already done it once, but I'll do it again. I'll show you what that command looks like. So it's just play-record. And the reason I put it as a shelf button is so that I can quickly click it and click out of it. I found that sometimes if it's in your Mel tab down here, or Mel input, it may or may not, you know, you might not be quick enough with the mouse. Also, sometimes it might get stuck in that field. So if I have it there, I'm going to select that locator. I'm actually going to show its, oops, make sure I can quickly select it. Cool. I'm going to hit play record, select it, and go something like that. Okay, cool. So now if I go and hit play, if you watch my locator here, it's now going to play that, record that animation to itself. It gets baked down as kind of like a smart bake. So if I go in here to the graph editor, you can see it's not putting a key. I don't think it's putting a key on every frame. Yeah, it kind of skips some frames depending on the movement you do. They are by default flat tangents or linear tangents. I'm just going to smooth that out. So you see it's kind of a jumbly mess right now, but that's okay. I'm going to go in here and set a key here so that starts out flat before it goes crazy and pulls. And go back to my follicle here, and I'm just going to delete all the animation on it. Bing, cool. And I am going to, whoops, why is it over there? Follicle, back to 0, buddy. There we go. I'm actually going to take that locator and then grab that follicle and do a parent constraint. This is just a little side thing so I can quick to put some animation on there. And so you see now I'm going to pull that across, which it's not very exciting right now because the balloon falls before I even get there. Yeah, you can see it's pulling it, but it's not that exciting. Alright, so let's do something to make this balloon rise up in the air. One of the easiest ways to do that is to actually use a field. Now the reason I'm using a field is because I want it specific to the balloon. I don't want it to affect the curve or the nHair. So I'm going to create a, it's an air that I want to create. Yeah, I'll create an air. And let's see what that does. There we go, even right off by default. It's already giving us a more balloony sort of motion. So if I go back to that air field, I can do some things. I can up the magnitude. So let's say let's go 50, which is going to be a lot. And it's going to pull it. And now you get sort of more of a balloony sort of look, but you notice that my curve is actually stretching quite a bit, which I don't want. So I'm going to go back to that hair system. And under hairSystem, there's two things you can do. One is this no stretch clip post solve, which seems like the thing you want, but if you watch, it may change the length of the curve, but still allows the original connection point to get really long. So I'm going to turn that off, but under stretch resistance, I'm just going to crank that. Oh, 200 is a lot, but let's see what it does. Look at that. There we go. Not bad. And the last thing I probably want to do is go to my nucleus and just set the scale attributes. Do something like 0.5. There we go. Actually, that worked out pretty well. So the last thing I'm going to do is give this thing some thickness. I'm going to create a NURBS circle. I'll call it STR profile. And I'm going to freeze it and delete its history and shrink it down really small. And then with it selected, I'll select the STR profile and the output curve that was created. And under surface, I'm going to create a extrude and extrude. And I'll reset this, but I always just go to path component. To me, this just makes the most sense. I'll hit extrude. Now I've got a little string on there. It's going to react to that curve. There we go. And if I want to clean up that animation a little bit, because right now it's a little bit hectic, let me find that locator, open up the graph editor, and I'm going to look at my translate Y first. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select all this, and actually there's a cool tool that I wanted to show. I think, is it here? Let me open this up. Yeah. Grab tool. Yeah, so now there's the new grab tool. I'm holding B to change the scale, and you can actually grab and move curves around, which is pretty cool. This is Maya 2024. I can also hold shift and smooth it, which I think is super cool. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller and make sure that my points that are hitting the ground are hitting the ground. Bring this one down a little bit, bring this one down a little bit, and just kind of smooth that out. And it's not going to look a whole lot different, but let's take a look. Just get it a little bit smoother. So it's kind of a quick and dirty way to fix your keys and smooth them out a little bit. So yeah, and then the last thing is when you have an animation that you like, you just always want to make sure that you cache it out. So I'm going to go back to 0, and I would save this. I save it. And I'll just call it nCloth balloon and then I will select the balloon itself and the output curve, and under end cache, I'm going to open that up and create a new cache. I'm going to do an end object because it's not a fluid. Generally, I just leave this how it is. I'm going to say, yep, fine, create. It's going to run through the animation and cache that out. And now if I actually go to my nucleus here and de-enable it, or basically turn enable off, I can go back here and actually now I can scrub this animation, and it's basically cached in, and you have to run some dynamics on it the whole time. And then you can render it or do whatever you want. All right, so I hope that's been helpful, and thanks.